past week has seen Sudanese military rulers say that they are ready to negotiate with the opposition over the political future of the country, but they insist that there should be no further unrest. Plus, a severe drought in Angola has plunged 2.3 million people into a food security crisis, with thousands of children being treated for malnutrition. This is Africa Focus. Here's a peek of the stories set in store for today.
Non-existent healthcare. We are in South Sudan, where illness is as deadly as war. 2 years on, the town of Colony in South Africa is still scarred by racist murder. Angola looks beyond oil as fish offers a new income.
I'm Lenny Rashid, and our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. Before we get into the main stories, let's take a look at the news that made the headlines around the continent.
Allahu Akbar.
Thousands of people prayed outside the Defense Ministry in Khartoum, site of a massive anti-government sit-in that has continued and bettered even after the military removed President Omar al-Bashir from power 2 weeks ago. The sit-in, the culmination of months of demonstration against Bashir's 3-decade rule, began on April 6th but was not halted, but the army removed Bashir from power on April 11th. Protesters are now demanding the restoration of civilian rule. Friday's prayer was led by Matar Yunis, a 49-year-old blind religious teacher from Darfur region who was repeatedly jailed under Bashir. Bashir is wanted by the International Criminal Court of allegations of genocide in the Darfur region, charges he denies. The opposition is demanding a quick handover to democracy from the military Transitional Military Council, TMC, which took over after removing Bashir. Reuters estimated that 20,000 people took part in the Friday prayer outside the Defense Ministry. A larger than usual share of them were elderly, dressed in traditional white robes. In the wake of death and devastation wrought by Cyclone Kenneth, tens of thousands of people in the far north of Mozambique now face the threat of violent flooding as torrential rain dangerously pushes up water levels. The first flooding was already seen in some parts of Pemba, the capital of Cabo Delgado province, as well as surrounding areas after heavy rain lashed down since daybreak, AFP journalists reported. Fields on the outskirts of the city had been lush green just a day earlier were now brown with flood water. Cyclone Idai hit central Mozambique 6 weeks ago, and communities in that region are still reeling from the floods that swept away homes, roads and bridges, leaving around 1,000 people dead and hundreds of thousands without shelter. This time around, 1,000 kilometers further north, the city of Pemba and its 400,000 inhabitants face similar dangers. Two-times winner Carlos Sainz says he's looking forward to tackling the dunes and deserts of Saudi Arabia's next year as the Dakar Rally organizers presented the third chapter of the endurance event. The 2020 edition will be held entirely in the kingdom, starting in Jeddah on January 5th and ending in Al-Qidaya near Riyadh on January 17th after 12 stages of 9,000 kilometers. Saudi Arabia will become the 30th country visited by the Dakar. The Dakar started in 1977 as a race from Paris across the Sahara Desert to the Senegalese capital in West Africa and has long been regarded as the world's toughest motorsport challenge. It has been staged in South America since 2009 and entirely in Peru last year after leaving Africa for security reasons. Next year's edition will be the first in the Middle East. Caster Semenya cruised to victory in the 5,000 meters at the South African Athletics Championships, a potential new distance as she waits for the verdict of the Court of Arbitration for Sport in an appeal against regulations seeking to limit her testosterone level. Semenya looked in complete control as she won in a time of 16 minutes, 5.97 seconds on the opening day of the championships, which serve as an important yardstick for the South African team going to the World Championships in Doha in September. The athlete is waiting for the outcome of her appeal to CAS to halt the introduction of new regulations by IAAF that will require her to take medicine to limit her natural levels of testosterone. CAS was set to deliver the verdict on Semenya's appeal before the end of April. Tens of thousands of Congolese in the DRC welcomed Martin Fayulu as he jetted back in the country after his Euro-American tour. Fayulu worked at the U.S. Group Mobile in several African countries from 1984 to 2003, first as an auditor and then as a Director General. Hailing from the Lingala-speaking west of the country, Fayulu owns a hotel in Kinshasa located midway between Kabila's residence and the president's office. The hotel was sealed in May, ostensibly for a tax audit, but has since reopened. Fayulu entered the political arena during a national conference in 1991-1992 that ended the single-party rule of long-term dictator Mobutu in the former Belgian colony. Fayulu won his first elective office in 2006 when he was elected to parliament.
In South Sudan, horrors abound of war, ethnic violence, rape, hunger and displacement. But for civilians living in the shadow of conflict, the greatest danger is often being cut off from health services, whether due to violence or lack of development in the vast remote areas that make up much of the country.
Nyachwat is a 2-year-old. Just a couple of hours ago, he was convalescing from malaria. His parents made it just in time to this clinic in Udier, a remote village in northeastern South Sudan. The little boy has been sick for several days.
I came to the clinic this morning. There was nobody here, so I went back home. When I returned, he was unconscious. He was shivering and convulsing at the same time.
Nyachwat could be saved, but others are not as lucky. Horrific tales of war, rape and displacement have become commonplace in South Sudan, but for many, the greatest danger is often easily treatable diseases. According to the International Committee of the Red Cross, which runs this clinic, 70% of deaths due to illness could be easily avoided. This region of the Upper Nile is one of the worst affected.
Most of the children who die here, they die out of mostly 3 common morbidities, which is malaria, acute watery diarrhea, and respiratory tract infection, which progresses to pneumonia in the long run.
The Upper Nile region, which borders Sudan and Ethiopia, was ravaged by the war in 2017. South Sudan's infant and maternal mortality rate is among the highest in the world. Women do the lion's share of the work at home, often taking care of many children, and as a result, often delay taking their children to the clinic.
It began with a stomach pain. They are all my children, sleeping together under one mosquito net. So if one falls ill, they all fall ill.
The clinic cannot deal with more complicated cases like operations or blood transfusions. The closest hospital is in Maban, which is a 3-day walk or 5-hour drive away. But in Udier, there is only one car in all the village.
The fate of a small farming town in the northwest of South Africa was changed irrevocably for around 80 rands or $5. It became the hotbed for racial tension in South Africa 2 years ago when a black teenager was killed by 2 white men. The killing highlighted that a quarter-century after the demise of apartheid, the social fabric of the Rainbow Nation is still run by race relations and often marred by suspicion and hostility. The community is currently working on reconciliation, but it remains difficult in the ever-present light of glaring inequalities.
Protests rocked this small South African farming town in 2017 after 2 white men were accused of murdering a black teenager. The court heard how 16-year-old Matlamola Maswao was pushed off a moving vehicle after farm workers caught him stealing sunflower seeds. Since then, a reconciliation process led by various local churches has been hard at work to cross the racial divide and unite the community.
Communities will have to decide. We make this broken world a better place for ourselves. And if we don't do it, no one else will do it for us.
Pastor Bella Lemotlo has lived in Kalini all her life and works with Pastor Peters on the Reconciliation Project.
Before we were living in peace, harmony with the white people, we didn't to fight each other. It was so good.
Despite a relative calm over the last 2 years, there are still glaring inequalities in Kalini and in the rest of the country 25 years after apartheid. From the outside, the most visible heritage of this time is still the way many towns are divided along colour lines.
The white people are staying at town, and there is a black people in town. who are staying there. So the thing is, there is no white person who's staying in township.
The school principal testified about the racial issues in Kulini during Motswao's murder trial. He says that while not all whites were racist, this particular crime was racially motivated.
If it was a white boy, do you think they would have done that? No. They would not even go to the police station. I think they would have gone to the parents and say, man, this boy is messing our land.
1 month after the men were handed down jail terms of 23 and 18 years for the so-called Sunflower murder, the situation in Kulini is calm. But this divinely brokered peace could come to an abrupt end in May as the men lodged their appeal.
Angolan President João Lourenço has made diversifying the oil-dependent economy his top priority after he became the country's first new leader in 41 years. The collapse in 2014 of the price of crude oil, which provides 70% of all revenues and nearly all hard currency, put immense pressure on the country to diversify. One natural and readily available resource that has been identified is fish. But a lack of equipment and know-how has meant that the industry has continued to struggle.
An abundance of fish on Angola's Atlantic coast. Employing thousands, it's a sector that's vital to the local economy. But now, ever since the collapse in the price of oil on which the country relies, Angola's government hopes fish could help to diversify the economy.
The fishing industry's contribution is as important to local economies as it is to the national economy.
But fishing represents less than 1% of Angola's GDP, compared to the 70% from oil. And while the industry is a stated priority of recently elected President João Lourenço, investment in infrastructure are sorely lacking. More vessels are needed and more processing factories like this one, transforming the fish into oil for the cosmetic and pharmaceutical industries and producing fish flour for the farming industry to use as animal feed.
We bring in 60 tons of fresh fish a day, and that produces around 12 or 13 tons of fish flour.
Nationally, the government wants to increase annual fish flour production from 20,000 tons to 30,000 by 2022. They've also announced the purchase of a specialised fishing vessel and a new port. But for the many small-scale fishermen just about making a living from the sea, the economic miracle promised by their president is as elusive as ever.
Coming up after the break.
The sport of boxing fights back in Nigeria after years of being down and out.
We're taking a water break. Do not touch that dial. Keep it switched. Welcome back. In case you just joined us, you're watching Africa Focus. Today's sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. In Uganda, malaria is the leading cause of death among children under the age of 5. Fighting it remains a challenge, but one 21-year-old woman has developed a soap that can help protect against the mosquito-borne killer.
80-year-old Ivoni used to have to make frequent hospital visits for malaria, as well as taking care of 7 children. But 8 months ago, she was given a soap that helps protect her and her grandchildren from mosquitoes that transmit the disease.
Before we started using the soap, we would constantly get malaria. But once we started using it, the cases decreased and it chased away the malaria. We no longer fall sick easily.
Joanne Nalobega suffered from malaria as a child, and she made it her life's mission to fight it. She focused on producing a repellent that could easily be used in everyday life. She decided to make a soap, adding ingredients that repel mosquitoes, like different varieties of the citronella plant.
Use our soap like a normal soap, like a normal regular soap you use for bathing, and we advise not to use strong scented perfumes and lotions, and then our soap will be more effective from 5 to 6 hours.
Joanne established her company, Euganics, in 2016. She currently employs 27 people, but hopes to hire more as demand for her product grows. She also wants to help low-income families that often cannot afford expensive mosquito repellents and nets. Currently, around 200 families receive the soap at a discounted rate.
We sell the soap to the high-income earners, the resorts and hotels at a high price, and then we can cross-finance the sales for the low-income earners in rural communities, and they can access our soap at the normal price as they buy our regular soap.
Soap may be an everyday item, but Joanne is showing that in the right hands, it could also help drastically cut the 600,000 annual deaths worldwide caused by malaria.
The Democratic Republic of Congo is potentially one of the richest countries on earth, with abundant deposits of copper, gold, diamonds, cobalt, and uranium. However, this vast country is also agriculturally rich, with the sector supporting 2/3 of the population. Agricultural production, though, has stagnated since independence from Belgium. The JTN plantation has survived decades of political upheaval, but the plant is aging, needing repairs and investment. Yet, its machines still handle tea, covering all the processing steps.
The view at 2,000 meters is idyllic, but it comes with an invisible mortal threat. Everything around the factory is controlled by armed groups. Joseph Kitsa watches over tea processing plant, which has venerable equipment and heroic commitment, survives in the highlands of Africa's most troubled locations, war-scarred Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. In its halcyon days before 1994, the JTN plantation, French acronym for the tea gardens of Ngeri, had 1,200 paid workers. The workforce cared for 450 hectares of shrubs and a huge processing plant on behalf of a subsidiary of Unilever in the then Zaire. The factory today is owned by 4 shareholders who rarely visit because of the insecurity.
Everything around the factory is controlled by armed groups. We only have 5 police officers and 5 soldiers.
The plant is aging, needing repairs and investment, yet its machines still handle tea, covering all of the processing steps: withering, rolling, oxidation, drying, sorting, unpacking. But times got tough in the past quarter century and remain so today. The factory is now operating at 10% of capacity.
The project helps me a lot. Before, I wasn't even able to buy a pair of pants.
In January 1999, JTN was attacked by the FDLR, the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda. The media was only able to visit JTN under military escort provided by the UN peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Congolese authorities, backed by the United Nations, hope to dry up military recruitment by bringing the JTN factory to full capacity and promoting other regional opportunities.
The problem of the different communities is first and foremost a problem to do with unemployment.
MONUSCO is backing a $6 million plan to help stabilize the region, but its ills can only be cured by a solution that breaks the vicious circle. If there's no security, there is no work, and if there's no work, this breeds insecurity. Locals in this area say tea plantations are a potential springboard for renewal. These enterprises not only grow and harvest the crop, they also process it, the much desired added value in activity that is so often missing in African economies.
Mozambique is going nuts about cashews, and they're boosting the economy's health. The country's cashew nut industry, one of the world's biggest, was dealt a body blow first by the 1977-1992 civil war and then by a controversial World Bank assistance package. Now, the government is looking to help the curved nutrient-packed nut to recover its past glory.
It's the end of cashew season, and this processing factory in northern Mozambique is bursting into action. The owner, a Portuguese entrepreneur, has been running the plant for 10 years now, but he says this is just the beginning.
The
future of the industry is promising because there is a strong demand for cashews. We're able to sell all of our production and develop our business. We can even find new markets.
In the 1970s, Mozambique was the world's leading cashew nut producer, but a long civil war and several natural disasters grounded the sector. When peace returned, producers were dealt yet another blow. 10,000 factory jobs were lost after the World Bank imposed an economic recovery strategy that was to shake the sector.
Para o nosso caso, não correu bem. Aconteceu que a indústria, portanto, derrapou. Tivemos colapso.
In our case, it wasn't beneficial. The industry collapsed. Now the situation is back to normal. Yes, we should liberalise, but we should also support the industry.
Uma liberalização, mas é preciso que haja controle também da indústria.
Although the country still lags behind the top 3 producers, Ivory Coast, India and Vietnam, it's gradually closing the gap. Much of this rebirth is thanks to the government. Its National Institute of Cashew Promotion distributed cashew seedlings free of charge to small producers like Armando Belanca, whose business is booming.
The price per kilo is correct now. Before, we sold the kilo at 50 cents. Now, it's €1, so it's okay.
Belanca's yield earned him nearly €2,000 last year, nearly 3 times the minimum wage of the average farmer. And while competition remains fierce, Mozambique's production is making inroads once again and even attracting international investors.
From the gritty slums to the posh neighborhoods of the Nigerian elite, boxing is a growing success in Lagos. Neglected for years in a country where football comes first, boxing is attracting thousands of athletes today. Boxing used to be the most popular sport in Nigeria until the 1960s, but completely disappeared from view until the beginning of the 2000s.
Cynthia knew nothing about boxing until she saw a match on TV 2 years ago. Since then, the sport has changed her life. In Bariga, a poor suburb of Lagos, she trains every weekend with dozens of other young people. At 17, she dreams of becoming a professional boxer to support her family.
I want to be a champion and a great person in the future. I want to be rich, and I know by God's grace, my God will surely help me.
For the past 13 years, Cynthia's coach, Always Kazim, has been volunteering at the local primary school's youth centre. There's no boxing ring, but that hasn't stopped them from fighting on the dusty ground in the scorching heat.
Boxing is now growing up in Nigeria, which is very good now. I thank Nigeria for doing that. But we still need their help in Nigeria to support boxing. Lagos State, Nigeria, in other states, we need Nigeria to support boxing. Boxing is not easy.
In the 1950s and 60s, Nigeria produced some of the best boxers in Africa, bringing home several Olympic medals. But that golden age has long passed, with boxing overshadowed by athletics and football, a sport that has produced several Nigerian superstars. But with the creation of special TV channels promoting the sport, boxing is beginning to appeal to a broader market.
Sustainable platform for everyone to train safely in a neat, clean environment, and also get the authentic experience of boxing. Because unlike other countries outside of Nigeria, in Nigeria, boxing really is only for the working class. So we're trying to change that perception, because I personally feel that it's for everybody.
Most Nigerian champions are training abroad, but thanks to such support, both amateurs and professionals are facing off in the ring for an ever-growing audience.
On Africa Focus, we love hearing from you, so make sure you get interactive with us on our various social media pages. Remember, you can view this program along with a wide array of other programs on DSTV channel 268. On behalf of the entire team here on Africa Focus, thank you for keeping us company on this exciting journey. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.